Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the facts according to Barima Kopnaiboa. Plato became the first Greek philosopher because he came to land in Africa. Then the Greeks called it Egypt. 3 names, Nubia, Alkebulan, and Kush, all means land of the black. Their history books will say that the first civilization was Egypt. That Egypt, they said, was the first civilization was simply the continent Africa. The Roman Empire was the inventor or mother serpent of colonialism. Britain, Great Britain, and other European countries brought politics. Jumadia yenim netse amanyosam. Abrofo na de bae na abrofo no omusua fi omomame aye friend Roman Empire no o your mind so ndo my fufra betwashos ama wagudia no de koni kroma koye ni ye. Nti niamecha ne se abrofo no omo invent na they started inventing political system like socialism, where the concern or the resources of the land won't favor a few people or a few wise or affluent people among the bigger majority, but it would rather favor the majority rather than the minority. And democracy, they say, the resources, the benefit of the resources would rather benefit the majority of the people. And also that the election of the leaders would be by the majority of the people. That was democracy. And communism, that was where the laws and the system or military might of the system would be much important than the economic warfare of the people. They invented fascism, where the military would have power. The leadership of the military will be the leadership or ruling class of the society. It means the country will put premium on military or army than any portion or part of the economy. So they invented their systems. Liberalism, the list goes on. I can about 100 political theories and systems. But what they brought here was imperialist democracy, that they would hide the practice of colonialism of the Roman Empire in the republic appeal of the Greek system. So it became mixed. What was known as liberalism means liberal, as in then they are in the middle ground. They won't go too extreme by being imperialistic or go too extreme by being democratic. They were in the middle. So all Western democracies were imperialist liberal system. And by colonialism, I mean when they started colonies here. So Europeans could live here, they could own towns, they could own nations elsewhere. Lands which were not theirs, they could take it by force. They used 2 theories, either war or religion, and all was inherited from the Roman Empire. So the monotheistic name for the Romans was invented by a king called Constantine. They picked it from the ancient Israelite archives. So the Israelite deity, Yahweh, became Latinized called Jehovah. And Jehovah, they became known by the Germans as God, and God became known by the English as God, God. And this God were military might, were their biggest power, in the sense that they went around the world spreading the God, one universal creator or God, all around the world. And when you accept that God, then you will become a colony of the Roman Empire, or the country spreading that God. So they brought God or religion, spread it around the world, conscripted Africans to change their names into European names. The African became colonized, became a black skin with a white mind, like an individual wearing a mask of a black skin, but what is hiding behind the black skin is actually a white mind. So they spread that colonialism around the world until other political leaders started coming out by virtue of Western education. In fact, I might say every civilization, every empire, by the time they fall, they come with their own superiority, inferiorities, in the sense that the Western civilization, they conquered Africa, and now they spread their languages and their names around the world, and now they are 1/3 or about 80% of the world population are dominated with European names and European idiosyncrasies. Those are the imperialism they inherited from the Roman Empire. So they brought politics to Africa, and by consequence, Ghana, and they started changing the way our society was. So we were a monarchy, a monarchical society, which elected our leaders by birthright. So they brought our system. By the time they brought colonialism and slavery to this part of the continent or Africa, practiced that system for more than 200 years before Black people started learning to gain freedom for the various parts of their world, or the world, or their societies. So let's touch Ghana. Politics, as we know it in Ghana, started with the Europeans. Europeans to start it was the Portuguese, and the Portuguese came with the God key. They used religion first. Even though they were a military power, they didn't go outwardly military. They would come in the form of spreading the God, the one supreme being, to all parts of the world, because it is written in their book to proselytize that one universal God to all parts of the world, regardless of culture and cultural idiosyncrasies. So the white people or the Portuguese started, they brought the God, and they even secured lands in this part of Africa, and they started building their fortresses and castles as their power bases when they come here or where they will do business. And in fact, by the time the Black people realized those power bases or the castles and fortresses were more powerful, were more guarded, were more armed than indigenous people. So when it comes to Accra or Ghana, the Christianborg Castle became the most powerful domain in the city by virtue that the governor of the British or the Western power, that was his domain. And the kings and the society which lived and owned the land before that European country came to build the castle or fortress there don't even or can't even match the power the white people will gather on the foreign land. And those bases became the first centers of colonialism. So they used the religion. Now a king could say he's a Christian, and he would divulge on the pertinent aspect of his cultural and rituals that have been bequeathed to him, and he will be fooled. He will be preached and repented to. King will become a Christian, and he would adopt a Western name. And when he gives birth, he will give European name to his descendants to prove he is educated. He's not an indigenous African like before the Europeans came. So by virtue of colonialism, Africans in the third world became just a mirror version of the mask the Europeans put on the third world. So Africans inherited the political liberal democracy of European imperialism by virtue of colonialism. So when the white people came here from the Portuguese, they had places like Elmina, and when the Dutch were here, they had places like Christianborg, and when the British came, they had places like Jamestown, Usher, Fort, and so many European colonies within Africa, depending on the country, spreading the imperialism in this part of the world. So Ghana became the colony of the British United Kingdom, and they ruled Ghana for more than 50 years after they bought it from the Dutch, who were here before. Dutch, I mean the country Holland. And they exploited the country we know as Ghana, which they called Gold Coast. Before they came, there was no unified country called Gold Coast. But after they came here, started their colony, they had one domain called the Gold Coast. And good men like Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came to fight independence and sacked the white people from the colony to their former, or where they come from, that is Europe. And good men like Osagyefo started practicing the kind of politics that would benefit the majority of people, not what the Europeans are preaching that is the best kind of politics, but what is informed by science. So Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, specifically in Ghana, won independence in 1957. And in 1957, after Ghana became independence, the domain we knew as Gold Coast became known as Ghana. And that Ghana became a sovereign country, and it had a republic. Republic means the new leader who have taken the power from the Western metropole would not rule by right or bet, that when he becomes the president, after he dies, his son will directly become the president, but instead he will be elected to be the leader by the majority of the people, And if he dies, another person, or if his time expires, another person will be elected to be the leader, not to inherit to be the leader. So that is how that was in fact how that portion of Western politics came to being in this part of the world by virtue of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah winning independence. And he didn't practice the liberal democracy the white people practiced. He practiced a different kind of political system. And that kind of political system was called scientific socialism. Before Osagyefo came in the scene, there was a political system known as socialism. But after he came in the scene, he improved that system and reinvented his own system called scientific socialism. And countries like China and Cuba, Russia, and all have learned from Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's scientific socialism. And he practiced that scientific socialism as the first president of Ghana for 9 years. That is the reason why he could achieve all the things he built and established and started for the country Ghana in just 9 years. And the white people didn't like it. And anywhere a political system that favors the majority of the people instead of the rich few was hated by the Westerners, and such a system must be debunked. So scientific socialist system like Osagyefo's Ghana was overthrown by a coup d'etat because the Western imperialist system and the local allies didn't like the right trajectory of political system in the newly founded Ghana country. And he was overthrown. After he was overthrown, the scientific socialist system that was overthrown was replaced by dictatorship. Dictatorship is when a group of people with military might decide that they don't like the leader voted into power or elected by the majority of the people. So the few military people or leaders or military ruling class would do a rebellion to overthrow the legitimate leader. And that was what happened to Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the disbanding of scientific socialism in Ghana's politics. And any political system that have come after that, Osagyefo's scientific socialism has been nothing but a neo-colonial, neoliberal political system that favors the former colonial masters, not the native majority of the people. So the idea of politics that to direct the affairs of the majority of the people to favor the majority of the people has been skewed. It has been drifted, in fact. Yachiano. Senia anka, awasa manusam ekono, nyesa, ena yehunu because abrofunu, omumpese, ebeko, no kwan so senia, amanyosem ewasa ekono. If politics was practiced how it is supposed to be practiced in Africa here, we would see a total change from what we see now and the decadence and lack of competence we see in Ghana and African politics. So the idea of politics, which was to serve the majority of the people, now have been subverted and it has become an oligarchy. A government of a few ruling class, a few people who have taken the power from the people and not serving the purpose they were elected for. even though they don't inherit their power from their parents, but elected for, they rule the people and use that power like their power was inherited. So the idea of politics, with another name called democracy, that the Greeks invented, the Romans reinvented and brought it back to us, and through colonialism and Africans learning and inheriting it through Western education, have not lived to its purpose. It have not served its purpose. Just say, near Juma pa you say the politics no. Enya eno na yehu. Enya no na namafo politicians omo ye amayehu. Nimdeɛ ne amanyɔsɛm a ɔsagyefo nom ne mpanipa bi ɛbɛkyerɛ ɔkwan pa no yɛato atwene because saa na aborɔfo ne pɛ no. Nti adesua yi ɛnɛ lesson yi yɛde bae sɛ Ghana ɔmampani foforɔ John Dramani Mahama yɛato aba ama no a ne tumi a yɛde maa no yɛamfa nwo no, nanso obegyina yɛnim sɛ yɛnto aba ama no ɛkyerɛ yɛn nti a yɛnto aba ama no ma yɛgye tom sɛ nea ɔka no nea yɛpɛ nti yɛbɛto aba ama no ɛwɔ sɛ yɛhu nea yɛhwehwɛ firi saa trust na yɛde maa no no ɛwɔ sɛ yɛnya biribi fim before yɛbɛnya biribi afim na ɛwɔ sɛ yɛte aseɛ nea yɛhwehwɛ fi saa amanyɔsɛm no and amanyɔsɛm no sɛ solve a problem it doesn't make sense. If politics doesn't solve the problems of the average majority, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't serve its purpose. So the question is, does politics serve its purpose as we see it now, as we have it now? I would emphatically answer that no. It is not living its purpose. The ideal of politics has been skewed. Now, politics has become private business. It has been disguised as public owning enterprise. That democracy, amanyɔsɛm no koraa Ghana ha no, ne twi no, amanfoɔ tumi ka sɛ democracy ne twi din yɛ kabi ma menka bi. Dabi, kabi ma menka bi sɛn. Ɛno nyɛ just democracy, amanyɔsɛm sɛ ɔman no a yɛte mu no mmara ne nkɔsoɔ ɛbɛkɔ ɔman no ɛfi yɛ leaders a yɛato aba ama ɔmo a ɔmo bɛyɛ nea yɛpɛ nti na yɛto ma ɔmo nti na ɔmo ma yɛto aba no ma ɔmo saa politics no deɛ ɛwɔ sɛ yɛte aseɛ ɛwɔ sɛ yɛadwene ba fie ɛwɔ sɛ yɛhu deɛ yɛhwehwɛ fi ɔmo. Politics must serve a purpose. If you're a leader and you got no ideas how to solve problems, you have no business in politics. Politics no near the nyame adwuma. Until obi te sɛ ɔsagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah ɔno nko ne politician a ɔbɛyɛ amanyɔsɛm te sɛ nyame adwuma. Ɔno nko ne politician. He is the only ɔsagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was the only politician who practiced politics like the work of God. He came in with nothing but wisdom and knowledge and left with nothing but a lot for the country, for the majority of people, not for his family or his immediate cohorts, but for the plural majority. That whatever he established in the name of scientific socialism for 9 years would last more than 90 years. He sacrificed the comfort of his family for the comfort of the greater good. Other politicians sacrifice our comfort for their family comfort, but he rather sacrificed his family comfort for the majority. And that is what leaders do. That is what Plato described as the philosopher king. In African politics, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and a few others are the only politicians who practice politics like it's supposed to be practiced. They practice Sajafo. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is the only politician who practiced politics to benefit the majority of the people. And that is the purpose of politics. Politics is to serve a problem for the majority of the people, that a group of people will bring their consensus, that wisdom would not come from one person's mind, but it would come from a collective, informed by what the majority of the people want. That is the tenet of politics. That was the idea the Greeks called the politica. That was invented by a philosopher called Aristotle. And Sajafo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, invented scientific socialism and practiced it to show us the way the best political system Africa has ever invented. And that is how to live true to the tenet of politics. So before the current politicians would practice politics to benefit the majority of people, they must learn, they must go into the history books, the purpose of politics, and the kinds of political system that generate different kinds of political results. And this is the education I believe is pertinent for us, especially my brother and my sister out there, to have the right knowledge about politics and political expectation from our political leaders. Politics is for public service. Politics is not for private enterprise. A person without patriotism can never be a good leader to serve the majority. In fact, an intelligent man in a society without patriotism in his heart, all he does would appear stupid. But even an ignorant person with patriotism in his heart, all he does will appear intelligent. And that is the purpose of politics. That is the umbilical of democracy or good governance or good statesmanship. Patriotism, thinking in the interest of the greater good, thinking to benefit the majority instead of the minority. And this has been my wish, that you would have this political education on what politics is and the way it should go. So if you have the opportunity to be the next generation leader, you would know what to do and what to deliver and what your people expect from you. And even if you're not a leader, you would be a responsible, patriotic citizen that would know what to expect from a good system he or she elected for. This has been my wish, that we all learn to be patriotic and be of good service to the country we all love called Ghana. This has been the facts according to Barry Makobnaibo. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, follow, like, comment, interact. Let's learn together. Be part of this movement. Thanks for watching. God bless you.